welcome back everybody to our online program on addiction and recovery. And we've been talking about the modern version of prohibition. And the example is this great publicity for a research study published in the British Medical Journal, which said basically that no amount of alcohol was safe. Very dramatic and very sensational headline, even though the research didn't really back it up. But this idea of alcohol and prohibition is really quite fascinating because for 2,500 years, people have been talking about sort of the benefits of drinking alcohol. And scientifically, we know that, for example, there are many cultures that include moderate drinking into their lifestyle, and they live to ripe old ages. Doesn't seem to be a particularly big problem. And there are some nations where it's a cultural factor, right? We can think of Italy as one example where drinking is sort of weaved right throughout the culture. But then if we look at, for example, artists and philosophers, yeah, they have some very interesting comments on alcohol. And one of the older ones is by this old Greek guy by the name of Euripides, who wrote a play on people getting drunk. And the reason he wrote it was a cautionary tale to anyone who thought they could get rid of drunkenness in the community. Because Euripides said, no, you're never going to do that, because when people drink, when people get intoxicated on alcohol, they feel alive, they feel vital, and that's its power. It allows them to rise above their boring, dull daily existence. And because of that, Euripides said, is that you're never going to get rid of it, so don't even bother trying. And even almost 2,000 years later, the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said precisely the same thing. In fact, he said, if you live a life just like sober and you follow what everyone tells you to do, go to work every day and do all your official things, eat right, sleep right, he said that life is staggeringly boring. In fact, they call it a dull and impotent life. And then he used the example of drunkenness to explain how people feel alive, right? And he talks about a festival where people will drink heavily to the point where they're drunk, and all of the sober people are saying, oh, isn't that terrible? Oh, they shouldn't be acting like that. But Nietzsche said that what's really going on was this drunkenness was allowing the people to rise above their daily dull existence. And so he was another one that said, maybe it's not a bad thing, right? If it allows people to have a spark in their life. And as I said, this is weaved into a lot of cultures. Whiskey drinkers write books after book on this kind of stuff, right? And the pleasures of whiskey and all that. So we have culturally, we've got a lot of benefits of drinking, but not to the prohibitionists, right? And this is the kicker, right? So according to this new prohibitionist thinking, we have to dismiss all that. We have to deny it. We have to say there are no benefits, and we're going to look at, again, this health thing, this very concrete, healthy-mindedness and good order kind of approach. And so this is kind of curious because it's one of those things that if we just focus on like the prohibition and getting rid of the drinking, we lose everything else. The reason why alcohol has been so prevalent in our society for 2,500 years, we lose any thought of that Euripides wrote about or what Friedrich Nietzsche said about drunkenness. We lose all these the nations, the cultures that have drinking weaved throughout their their existence and part of what makes life worth living. All to focus on this is one thing, on this prohibition stuff. Anyway, that's it for this episode, and we'll be back next time with another episode on our topic of the modern prohibition.